recordings up, so you guys will have that to look back on if you need it by the end.
Okay.
Cool. So
Alright.
why don't we first? I'll just like watch like a minute or so. I'll just be a minute or so while I'm looking for something to talk about, and then we'll probably start just hopping into stuff pretty quick here. Okay, so we're starting off with Mercy, Farah, D.Va, Torbjorn, Moira. The other team, Matra, May, Bap, Widow, Mercy. All you guys are doing a good job of staying out of LOS and Widow. Uh-oh, D.Va gets D-Mexed early.
Good job, Ronnie.
Okay. Widow takes high, gets a snipe, Farah peeks in, trying for the res maybe. Gets it off. Farah ends up dying in the meanwhile. Okay. So they got picks that just kind of let them open up there. Okay, let's see how this next fight goes. Then we'll probably start touching on stuff. Okay, nice. We got an early pick. That's good for you guys while you're trying to recontest. I like that none of you staggered. That's good, right? That no one ended up staying behind too long. Ultimates on the board. They have Ram ults here. And they'll actually have a few to use. You guys are a little bit further behind on ults. Oh, Mercy gets away with the res. So awareness-wise, just for all of you, make sure that because they're on a Mercy, obviously team composition dictates playstyle. The only time you guys are gonna actually need to pay attention to dead bodies is when they're on Mercy. So that would have been easy to deny if you guys had been putting more attention to it. Individually or on the team level, just paying attention more to the body, because both D.Va could have maybe seen it a little bit quicker, but then everybody else, could have also shot at the Mercy as well. That could have just helped stop a free res there. Okay, taking the high ground from the Widow. Okay, Torb's maybe pushing a bit far there, bit far into them there. They use Falc early. Yeah, they're just gonna get all their ults just a tad bit quicker. Okay, their Widow's not in a great position. Okay, yeah, so they get to, because they just had their ults quicker, they pop all 3 before you guys are able to pop any. Torb dies quick. We'll probably go over just general positioning with all of you guys soon, but probably just a bit too far on the open there. Okay, so lots and lots going on. Farah's jumping around, Mercy, yeah. So they're all just using 3 different ultimates.
Now, why do you think? Why do you feel like they had ult before us? And what are ways that we can figure out? Because something I struggle with is I just struggle with knowing when they have ult.
Yeah, so that's primarily just because they won the fight, that they had more ult charge than you guys, because they obviously killed more of you than you did of them, so that means that they ended up getting more ult charge out of it. That's just generally how it goes. Assume that if you lose the fight, unless you popped off and did a ton, they'll probably be closer to their ults. Now,
Okay.
why don't we, because that's actually something really important. A good, really important question is, how do you know what ults they have? Team,
Right.
we're gonna spend quite a bit of time here going over communication, because communication is probably around 60%, 70% of teamwork in general. in Overwatch. Like there's a big major chunk of how you guys are going to be working together as a team that will come down to how you're talking to each other. There's other things in there as well of like making sure you're all on the same page of like knowing the same information, being positioning in the same places, being on the right team composition, playing your team composition in the right way. Like there's other things mixed in there, but a big
Hmm.
portion of this is how do you guys talk to each other? And if you guys and are talking to each other uh, better, then that's what's going to separate you guys from the other from just like a random team of 5 people playing, right? If you just take a random group of 5, the big thing that will separate you guys is how you're actually talking to each other. So why don't we start on all of that? We can get into. I need to like make it some sort of chart for this. Maybe that'll make it easier to see. So apologies that a lot of this is going to be verbal. But when it comes uh, to the in between fight, that there should be a lot of communication that's going on. Have any of you guys or any of you familiar with like just the term ult tracking, ult planning? Is that something that's or ult countering as well? Is any of that kind of in the ballpark? Any of you guys know what that mean? All of that means?
What do
I mean, a
I would say
little
pretty
bit for
familiar
me.
with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so a bit. So why don't we go into like what that actually looks like? How do you do it? Who does it and whatnot? So we're gonna go over a couple roles, so communication roles that you guys can all just kind of figure out who does it best. I can give you the traditional who typically does it on the team, but if you guys can also take some time to try to figure it out yourself of who does the role fit best with. So in between fights there are 3 things that should happen. You guys should talk about ult tracking. So, what ultimates will they have? Ult countering. So, what ultimates do they have, and how? What are we going to do about it? Because if you just leave it, if you don't talk at all in between the fight, then you're just coming in blind. They're gonna pop 3 ults on you, and you're not gonna have any plan to stop it. And
Okay.
then the third step is ult planning. What are you gonna do with your ults, right? Why would it be, let's go one by one through the 3 here. Why would it be helpful to know what ultimates they have?
I mean, I would say like when you say like what ults do they have in terms of like their ability to like pop them.
Yeah, so like ultimates whose ultimates are online. So
Yeah.
knowing that so for example, coming into the fight and already knowing that they had the Ramatra, Baptiste, and Mercy ult available, and then they didn't have the others, like what makes that valuable information?
What do you think, Lucky Duncan?
For me, I mean, yeah, I mean, knowing what ults they're gonna pop during the fight, I don't know. I guess just to know.
Mhm. Yeah. I mean, it's just like a couple things for you, right? One is that you can look to avoid them. You can look to and you can look to counter them, right? Like you can do what knowing that they have them means you can do something about them, right? That's the most simple thing, right? Is if you don't know they're happening, then they're just going to use them and you're going to get caught off guard and go, "Oh no, they're using Ram ult," right?
Right.
But if you knew that it was coming, then it's no longer a surprise to you. You can in fact, and that's why you don't want to just stop with the oh they have it, because if you just stop there and go, okay guys, they have Ramatra ult, then it's not super helpful. Like it's a little bit helpful, right? You can look to avoid them, but when you don't have a plan, then it just is a lot less helpful. Or you can think a really good example of this is, let's say they have a really big combo, like a Genji Dragon Blade, or Nano Blade, right? They're nanoing the Genji and they're going in with it. Um, if you guys don't say anything whatsoever and you don't know what's happening, then it's just going to roll through all of you and you didn't have any plan to stop it. And then if you just say they have Nanoblade this fight, then yeah, it's a little bit helpful to know. But if you don't actually come up with a plan to stop it, then once again, Genji's just probably going to roll through all of you guys because you didn't actually do anything to stop it. You're just kind of letting him run through you. So that's why ult planning and ult count or ult tracking and ult countering is so important of steps in between fights because it
That makes
allows
sense.
you to be ready for the fight that's coming ahead of time. It's actually strategizing and planning together as a team. Um, And then the final step is ult ult planning. Why would it be helpful to know what ultimates your team wants to use together? There are two primary reasons why you don't want to just use whatever ults and you want at any time.
I think it's because you're able to combo each other's
Yep,
alts.
that's a big one, right? Yep, so you can combo with each other better. If you're just using them whenever, then, let's say you did have a Nano Blade, right? Then the Genji on a Nano some random person, and then Genji goes in by himself and dies, right? Whereas if you actually got
Right.
the combo down, well, then you actually get value, right? So comboing, that's a big first one there. What's another reason?
Like strategizing when to use it, so you don't all use it at the same time.
Exactly. Over ulting or conversely under
Okay,
ulting,
yeah.
right? So if you come into a fight with 5 ultimates and you use 5 ultimates, it's not necessarily bad if they also used 4 or 5 ultimates. Then it's not over ulting because you all use the same amount of ults. But if they had 1 or 2 ultimates that they used and you guys used 5, well, now you've just over ulted, and next fight, now they're going to have that advantage against you, right? Because now they have ults and you don't. And
Right.
they're
It
probably going
was
to
like
win.
overkill.
Yeah, exactly. It's overkill. Or like on the other flip side, maybe they use like 2 or 3, and you guys just like kind of weren't paying attention and maybe only use like 1, right? And then when you had more options available, and then now they kind of just run through you. So planning it out is really helpful to get all of that coordinated. So let's start with ult tracking. So traditionally, ult tracking falls to the main support category. So that's going to be like the character playing like Lucio, Mercy, Brig, like that kind of character. Because a lot of times you see a lot of the battlefield, you see a lot of what's happening around you, and there's also a little bit less of a mechanical requirement. So you're able to pay a bit more attention and be aware of your surroundings. A lot of your character actually will come down to your awareness, which puts you in a really great position to know what ults have been used. Now, like I said, this does not have to be for that position. The other support could do it too. Typically, like a tank could struggle a little bit because they're tunnel vision on the front line sometimes. But you could theoretically have anybody do it. Just with all of these communication roles, like see what works, right? Like maybe go into some games, try it out with one person doing it for a little bit, and then if that doesn't, then maybe try somebody else on it, and just see who works best and who wants to do it, and who's able to do it the best, and things like that. Um,
This you're
yep,
you're talking about alt tracking, like
yeah, ult
someone.
tracking specifically. Yep, somebody
Okay,
being in charge of it.
I feel like Lucky Duncan probably has the most game knowledge out of any of
Hmm.
us. So I feel like that would be a
Yep.
responsibility or a role that would be most
Yeah.
effective if you took it.
And the reason why you want to have and with these communication roles, why you want to have one person in charge of it is because it stops cluttering as
Hmm.
well as it assigns the responsibility so it actually happens. So if all of you are in charge of calling out what ults they have, then like everybody's kind of like talking over each other, and either everyone's going to talk over each other and then nobody can hear what's happening, or the flip side is that nobody says anything and then it doesn't happen when it's not assigned to somebody. So assigning it to somebody as a role means that now it's somebody's responsibility to make sure it actually happens, and everyone has to listen to that person. So it's a little bit more streamlined of communication. So let's actually
That's helpful.
let's get into like how does this actually work. So ult tracking is going to be is honestly simple process once you break it down. You're going to press tab, or sorry, actually, Xbox players, whoopsies. Open up the statistics menu right when you're in your game,
Hmm.
and see what the team comp is running. So as soon as the fight ends, or as soon as the fight is mostly over, open that up so you can see what characters everyone's running, and you can kind of glance at that. And you're going to do a scan of the enemy team comp. So let's look, for example, at team 2, and you're going to think to yourself, and you're going to think, the last fight I saw or heard that they used Ramatra ult, they used Bap ult, right? They used those two. So they don't have those for this upcoming fight. Ults happen every other fight, approximately. If they
Okay.
just used it, they're not going to have it for the upcoming fight. and typically they take about a fight to charge. So that means they won't have it. Let's say they just swapped to a May. Well, now we know that that's fresh as well, right? It resets it so that they're not going to have it for this upcoming fight if they just swapped. So now we know that they don't have those. This is a process of elimination. And then maybe you're not quite certain on the Mercy or the Widowmaker because maybe you were dead or you didn't see them. So you can ask your team and they can fill in. So you say they use those 3 ultimates. I didn't see Mercy or Widowmaker, and then your teammates fill in. They used Mercy ult that fight. So now you know through a process of elimination, because you've eliminated every other option, they've used everything else, or they've swapped or something like that. So now the only thing that they have on the board is Widowmaker ult, right? And now you can go from there. But that's basically the approximate step by step. Is it's a process of elimination to know what they have used, to know what they are going to have in this upcoming fight. Now, other things that will impact this will be let's see, will be things along the lines of like how fast do their ultimates charge. Each character has a different ultimate charge speed, which doesn't drastically change it, but it does change it a bit. So like a Tracer is going to be getting her pulse bomb much faster than a Lucio gets his beat. Just
Okay.
kind of how that works.
Okay.
And then another thing is how much is that person doing? That's something else is a bit more advanced. Is like a Zarya who died at the very beginning of the fight is going to have a lot less ult charge than a Zarya who was full charge who killed the entire rest of the team. Right, a lot more charge there. So paying attention to who used when did they use their ultimates, but then also like who's doing what, right? That adds a bit more complexity to it as well. But the very basics is just what did they use so that we know what they don't have. Does that all make sense? Any questions on it?
That makes sense. I guess one question I had was, and maybe like this is the next step that you were going to bring up, but so that's all about trying to figure out like what ults do they have and communicating that properly. Then the next thing with the alt countering, like is that something that you want to break down, or is there like steps to that?
Yeah, so it's not necessarily a step-by-step thing like the other one. This one is just more like make sure that you're actually coming up with a plan. Don't just say, oh, they have these ultimates and don't do anything about it. Now, some ultimates, there's more that you have to do against it than others, right? Like usually it's the big counters that you have to worry about. But like, for example, there's not usually much that you're going to be able to do or need to do against like a Mercy Valk, for example, right? Like Mercy Valk, yeah, it's an ultimate, but it's not like insanely powerful in and of itself. And there's also usually not much you can do to like counter it per se.
Right.
But there are but there are exceptions. Like for example, like you could use a McCree High Noon or a Soldier Visor, and those are pretty easy ways to mow down a Mercy flying through the sky. So those are counters that you could look to call out. Baptiste Ultimate and Ramatra Ultimate, those are some things that you could come up with a plan against. Sometimes it's you use an ultimate to stop it, but then other times it's you do something else. Let's say you didn't have any ultimates to stop. Let's just start with Baptiste. What's something you can do that would help counter BAP? If you knew that it was coming, what's something you could do to take the value away from a Baptiste window?
I mean, all I really think about is like all I can take it down is an EMP or just staying out of line of sight.
Yeah, well, that's a simple one there. So EMP would be like the ult counter, right? So if you had an EMP, that would be a very good option. But if you don't have that, which you don't in this situation, very, very easy thing is just play out of line of sight. Just know that it's coming, and when it comes, just run away and get around a corner, right? But if you didn't know it was happening, would you be able to do that as effectively? Probably not as quickly, right? You might get mowed down while you're out in the open.
Right.
Ramatra Ultimate. A lot of times, like with ultimates like that, like once again, you can be ready for it to run away from it, but also a very easy one to counter things like that, or Shatter, or Grav, or Sigma Flux, or Junkrat Tire. Another easy one that doesn't require ultimates is to stay split up, stay spread out as a team. Because if you're all packed up in this tiny little area, then Ramattra is doing damage to 5 people. But if you're all spread out and further back, well, then Ramatra's only doing like getting 1 person, right? Which drastically reduces his value. Same thing with like a Grav. If Zarya gets 5 people in her Grav, then that's massive value. If she gets 1 tank in her Grav, well, then the tank can just usually get pocketed out of it. So staying split is another great way. You can also think about ultimates. So obviously you have things like, so like let's say they had, for example, a Nano Blade. You have obvious things such as you have a Lucio Beat or Zenyatta Trance, or you can even use abilities, right? Like you can call to use abilities like Baptiste Immortality Field, and making sure to hold on to abilities for specific things, like hold on to Bap Lamp for the Dragon Blade, right? Where once again, if you don't know what's coming, you can't do that. And then what are maybe some other ultimates that could counter a Nano Blade? Because there are actually quite a few if you think about it.
A Nano Blade, maybe like Zarya's ult.
Yep, you can grab it. Yep, certainly. Anything else?
Lucio or Zen,
Yeah,
just
Lucio or
keeping
Zen.
everyone healed.
Yep, those some so using those ultimates definitely are the easy like defensive counters. There's actually quite a bit that you could use to counter an Blade. You have Roadhog, Whole Hog. You have Sigma Flux that you can pull the Genji up in the air with.
Mm.
You theoretically, this one's a little bit harder, but you can shatter him as Ryan. You can Junkrat Tire one shots a Nano Blade.
Mm-hmm.
Nano Blade and Genji. You theoretically, let's see, what are other things? I mean, check a Diva Bomb at him, like that is a a option.
Right.
Things like that, right? So you just like you have a bunch of different options that you can just look to utilize. A lot of times tank ultimates are gonna be good for that kind of thing. Okay, so that's ults. That was right. What we just covered was ult. Uh, sorry, blanking here. Ult tracking and then ult countering. Usually ult countering, I'd say probably wants to go to the ult planner. It could go to the ult tracker, but a lot of times ult planner can do the countering as well. So finally, we have ult planning. Ult planning is that making sure you're comboing and you're telling your teams we're going to use this ult and that ult. Okay, so different things that you can do with this is look at combo ults, right? So this sometimes can just be the really easy ones like a Nano Blade, or if you have Grav will literally combo with like anything. Right? You can throw you can throw a Dragon Blade into it. You can throw a Hanzo Dragon. You could throw a Pulse Bomb. You could throw a Moya Coalescence, a Baptiste. Like pretty much anything will combo with it. But also, like, there's a ton of other combos that are maybe a bit more niche that people don't necessarily think about all the time, right? Um, for example, I mean, honestly, on your team, you don't have too many combos. I mean, like, you can call things, for example, like make sure that when Pharah is barraging the Diva defense matrix, that gives her defense matrix, right? That's like an easy
Yep.
combo that you can do, not necessarily ult wise, but just a call out. Um, I don't think your team has too many combos, but and on their team, I mean, like they could theoretically combo like a BAP window with like a May ult or something like that. They honestly on their team don't even have too many great combos, but like other combos that you can easily do, like Sigma Flux will combo with a lot of things. You combo Sigma Flux with a High Noon or a Visor, or you can combo it with a May ult or a Baptiste lamp window or things like that. You can pretty much combo with anything. Combo with a Pharah barrage. You can combo Shatter with a lot of different things. You can combo Mail with a lot of different things. You can like really a lot of the zoning ultimates combo with a lot of things. Mail will combo, or sorry, Ana ult will combo with a lot of different things. So just look to combo things, so you get
Okay.
maximum value out of it. And then ult usage in terms of how many to use. Typically, you don't want to use 5. So you can come up with like maybe like 2-ish that you can use, and then maybe put some conditions on others. So if you have every ultimate, say, okay, this fight, We're going to come in and we're going to use Valk and Barrage. And we're going to Defense Matrix for Barrage. And then, if we need it, then we can also add in a Coalescence, right? And you're putting a condition on it. That way you're not just immediately using it. Call out the number that you're using, add conditions. If they start using a ton more, you can use more. Things like that. Any questions on that or any of these other roles? Also, sorry, excuse me, I have to cough. So maybe anybody have questions on it?
So would you so you said you recommended that the alt tracker and the alt planner be 2 different roles?
Yeah, typically it could be the
Okay.
same person, but that could theoretically end up just being too much for one person.
Right. Okay. That
Unless
makes sense. Yeah.
unless they're just really comfortable with it. I remember I only ever had like one team where somebody did both, but typically it's just between 2 different people. Ult planning, honestly, is a bit more flexible. That could kind of come down to anybody. Traditionally, it comes down to more of a tanking position because they are more shot call-y. They dictate the engagements of fights and when you're
Okay.
going in. So that's just something to think about, but it doesn't have to be your tank.
You hear that, Roscoe? We're gonna need you to start taking command. Start speaking up.
Mm-hmm. So
Uh,
that's something else to think
cool.
about. Any other questions on it?
Oh, I think I got that part. If anyone else is good.
I'm good here.
Yeah, I'm good too.
All right, cool. Let's go back. Okay, so maybe you can go like one more fight. Maybe the next fight will be a good example of it. So they kind of clean up. They use a lot more ults. Notice, so here. Okay. So, this right here is what we call an over ult. And we can get into the how do you tell whether or not you've won or lost a fight, because that's probably important information for you guys to all know, as well as it is something also that you could potentially give somebody a role for just calling out when the fight's won or lost. Now, let's just go through this. The very basics. There's some more complicated stuff to it, but the very basics is you tell whether or not the fighter's won or lost by watching kill feed. When the kill feed shows that you are up or down, 1 or 2 people, that is an advantage or a disadvantage. In which case you play more aggressively or more passively, right? It's not a won or lost yet, but you push in or back out a little bit. If you are up or down, 2 to 3 people, then that is a won fight or a lost fight. In which case, you want to, if you've won the fight, you go push, 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 extra aggro. If you've lost the fight, well, at that point, you want to get out if you can. If you can't, let them kill you. That way you don't stagger yourself and just be really separate from your team. And then finally, you don't want to use ultimates in a won or lost fight, because if you've won the fight, then it's just kind of overkill. If you've lost the fight, then it's not going to change the fact that you lost, right, by using an ultimate. So here in this situation, it is a 2v5, so this is a lost fight because you're down 3 people. And therefore, ulting, though you could get a decent ult, kills 1 person. I doubt that that's going to make a difference because you're still going to end up losing. At least I would assume so. They kill Mercy, they get the res off. We come back and we stagger a little bit longer. We actually bait, they use another ultimate there. So we actually come back and we stagger on, but ultimately I still think that this ends up being lost. Ends up still being lost anyways. So just it's a statistics game, is what it comes down to. Like you do have maybe you have a chance, right? Maybe you have like a 5% chance, but the question is, do you want to use an ultimate on a 5% chance? Now, when you could use it in the next fight and have a 60% chance of winning, right? Like that kind of thing idea. and things to think through. Now, you might have noticed that 2 is kind of like the middleman there. I said 1 to 2 and then 2 to 3. 2 is in the middle because there's a lot of other things that go into whether or not you've won or lost a fight, such as other advantages and disadvantages. Which team has better positioning, more health, has and or is using more abilities and ultimates, closer spawns, things like that, right? So a lot of different things that can also impact the fight. And if you are up, or let's say that you are down 2 people, and their entire team is 1 HP, right?
Yep.
Still winnable, right? But if you're down 2 people and you have no additional advantage, significant advantage, then at that point it's pretty much lost. And you can probably just start to look to get ready for the next fight. So that once again means not using ultimates and trying not to stagger yourselves. So here, this is a lost fight. You probably want to get out if at all possible. And then, like I said, you could assign this role to somebody. Doesn't really matter. Maybe like a support once again who's able to kind of see the flow of the fight the best, but doesn't necessarily have to be. It's just a thought. Any questions on any of that? Anybody have any?
So to recap real
Yep.
quick, basically, like it's really important to determine whether a fight is winning or losing. If you're up 1, that doesn't mean the fight is won, but it means, or if you're down 1, but it could mean like increase aggro or like fall back and decrease aggro.
Yep.
And then if you're up 2 or more, it's pretty comfortable to say like the fight is won, so like clean up the team, or if you're
Yeah.
down 2, then like pull back and regroup.
Yeah, and just remember that 2 it could go either direction, and it
Right.
depends on all those other factors.
Okay.
So 3 is more definitive. 3 or more is much more definitive. 2, it could go either direction, so pay attention to the rest of what's happening. If the fight has just started and you're up 2 people and there's nothing else that has happened, no other additional advantage, it's pretty much lost. So like here, for example, right? You're down. It's a 3v5. If they started to push in right now and you're down 2 people, because you have no additional advantage, this would be lost. But like theoretically, if you had like a massive ult combo and they try to push into it, you could make it work, right? Or
Right.
if your spawn was like right next to you, could make it work, right? But here, just want to back up and regroup.
And then you'd say like if you're up 1 or 2, hold off on ults until it's more equal.
No,
Or
you can still use ultimates in the 1 or 2. Don't use ultimates once you've won the fight, right? So
okay.
if you've won this, if you have decided
Or
that you've won
lost,
the
right?
fight, yeah, won or lost. You don't want to use it
Okay.
if you won or
Okay.
lost. But at the advantage or disadvantage phase, you can still use ultimates.
Gotcha.
Yeah, if you have a significant advantage and you're not quite sure if you've won yet, so let's say you're at like 2+2, and you think you've won, but you're not certain, you could like hold off and see if you need it, right?
Right.
But a lot of times it's you still use it if the fight's happening. Advantages and disadvantages aren't a won or lost fight yet. Okay. Okay, so still down 1. So right now we're trying to engage. Farah is engaging 1 without the Torbjorn, because Torbjorn's all the way back at spawn. 2 is engaging and then the Moira is here, and the D.Va's here. So make sure that you're all paying attention to where your teammates at. And trying to engage together and let your tank kind of engage maybe a little bit before you as well. So here, because you're engaging by yourself, then everybody gets to look at you and see you, and you just end up taking a lot more damage than if like Widowmaker was distracted. It'd go a lot easier. Nice. Good
Mercy
kill.
with the punch.
Yeah.
Punching Widow. There we go.
Okay, so maybe this is the fight where we can go into it. We'll go over another comm thing. Trust me, we'll get through some comm things, and then we won't have to hammer into those, as much after we've actually covered some of them. But this is a lot of introductory communication stuff.
Totally.
Okay, good. So let's look at who's everyone looking at here. So Mercy's looking at Moira. Let's see. Okay, so Mercy's looking at Moira. Moira's looking at Bab. Far's looking at Bab. So they're both looking at the same thing. Torbjorn's looking at a wall. Torbjorn's all the way back here, right? So Torbjorn's running away. And then Diva is on Mercy, right? So a few different targets. Let's see. We got the Mercy. Let's see if it. Moira's now still on Bap. Swapping around, looking at that. Farah's not on anything right now. Diva's looking at a wall. Right. Now on Ramatra, Torbjorn is on May and Bap. Farah's on Ramatra. Okay, Moira's on healing duty. Okay, so maybe you kind of caught my point there. You guys are all looking at different things and shooting at different things. When all of you look at different things and shoot at different things, then everybody kind of tickles everybody, and then nobody dies. You just do a little bit of damage here and there, and then everybody kind of lives through it. So, way that you guys can be more effective is if all of you look at one thing and melt that thing down, and then once they're dead, then you look at another thing and melt that thing down, and then they're dead. And you look at another thing and melt that thing down, and then they're dead. So if you're all looking at the same target, then they die a lot quicker. So, so for example, like when Farah and Moira were on Baptiste, if Diva was also on Baptiste, then Baptiste would be dead, probably. Okay, instead of living on 1 HP. So, way that this can be resolved pretty simply is by having a target caller. Target calling, and maybe you guys have, I don't know if any of you guys have ever watched any professional level gameplay, like if you've ever listened to comms in like Overwatch League back when that was a thing or anything like that. But the way that they speak kind of sounds a little bit silly, but in the middle of a fight, a lot of their communication revolves around them just yelling a particular character's name over and over and over again. So, for example, if you're all trying to focus on the Baptiste, you would be going bap 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 bap. And then if you wanted to swap, you go mercy, 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 mercy. May, 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 ram, 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 ram. Widow, 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 widow. Right? And what this does is when you guys are all calling the same thing, then you're all focusing the same thing. It helps grab your attention. It helps focus you on who you're attacking. If one of you just kind of was like, I'm shooting at BAP, guys, then it might just get lost in the comms, and no one's paying attention. And if all of you are calling all your different things, then once again, there's nothing unifying you guys. So typically, the recommendation is to have the tank be the target caller, and pretty much it's quite simple. Just call who you're shooting at. Because if you call who you're shooting at, then other people can shoot them with you. And then from there, I mean, like, you also need to, like, have good target priority and shoot at the right things. But if you call who you're shooting at, tanks typically are on the front line. They have the most consistent damage. If you had, like, a tracer in their backline calling it, then no one else is going to be able to follow up with the tracer. But a tracer can follow up with what the tank's shooting at. So if the tank is calling something else, calling who they're shooting at, so the tank is saying mercy, 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 other people can join in and also say mercy, mercy, mercy to help echo call and emphasize that they're also shooting at that person. You guys don't call your own targets unless you see that they're really low where you have the opportunity, and then you can say like Baps one, something like that to like get the tank to hopefully swap their attention to the BAP, right? But you want to try not to like clutter your communications. You don't want to call over top of each other because then that just once again descends into chaos if you're all on your own things anyways. So generally speaking, try to roughly follow what your tank's doing in terms of what they're shooting at. Or you could have a DPS do it, especially a DPS if they have consistent damage and they're not in their back line. Like, you don't want your Widowmaker doing it because, like, Widow's going to be able to snipe anybody anywhere. But maybe, like, a soldier could potentially call target. But so it kind of depends on what characters they're playing. Like Torbjorn could theoretically call a target, better than like a Pharah could, because Pharah's gonna be diving around their back line sometimes. All right. Any questions on that? Does that all make sense?
That makes sense to me.
Yep,
Yeah,
makes
makes
sense.
Okay, cool. Let's keep going. So here we are winning this fight. Theoretically, I guess it's still a 5v5, but they're giving up space and we have better positioning. Okay, nice kill. Diva gets demeched. Okay. Nice. We win, and we only needed to use bomb. Cool. Oh, Mercy gets the res, but we get the Mercy. Alright. Clean up, clean up. Cool, cool, cool.
What?
I don't. Okay, well.
Interesting.
I remember Lucky Duncan called me out on that one.
Okay, so they're coming in. They have a lot more ults online than you guys do. Like they have 1, 2, 3, 4. You guys have 1, 2. Right? So that might inform how you go about this fight. So different things you could do is you could try to ult first and have the advantage in terms of initiation. You could look to dodge out their ults and counter them. You could look to take a dry fight and say we're not gonna. They have the ult advantage. We have another fight on this point. Let's go in, try to take the fight, and not use any ultimates because then we could come into the next fight and have ultimates and they won't, right? Or we'll at least have made it more even in ultimate wise. So those are some different ideas. Okay. You guys aren't taking the high ground, so why don't we're gonna take minutes to go over general positioning that should apply to all of you because it's general.
So you start to realize how like there's a lot of different roles that people kind of need to take responsibility for, like within the game itself.
Yep. Definitely. Like that, and that's once again like that's all. It's all because it's communication and teamwork based. Man. Also, apologies. I think my throat's a little scratchy. I like had a concert on Friday, and I think it's lingering. All the singing was
No, you're
lingering
good.
into my voice.
You're good.
So if I have
Yeah,
to
you're loud and
cough
clear.
at all, that's what I'm doing.
No problem.
All right. So, yeah, if I'm right here. Oh, also, what's the time looking like? How much more time do we got here?
So
Because
we got I mean, so Lucky
I probably
Duncan.
gotta start getting ready. Yeah, in like 10 minutes.
Yeah, so we'll do an hour block for this one.
gotcha.
And then we can plan. We'll try and plan for like a 2-hour session the next time, and then
Cool.
maybe we can wrap it up with like a final 1 hour. or
Okay,
something.
yeah, that works with me. So we can talk about scheduling after we're done.
Okay.
Okay, cool. So, if I'm standing right here, and the enemy team is standing right there, and they're all looking at you and shooting at you, and you decide to run away. So you're like 1, 2, 3 seconds ish to get around the corner. Now, from here, you're completely safe, right? Because you can't shoot through solid objects, and we can do a lot of the same stuff from cover. But in that time it took you to run here, you ended up dying because you're way too far out in the open. But if you're right here and shooting from here, you can do a lot of the same stuff. But now, look, it takes you half a second to duck behind the corner, which is much, much better. Therefore, good positioning is the usage of cover, whereas bad positioning is the absence of cover. The further away you stray from it, the worse off you're going to be. And quite a few of you guys have died just because you're just running smack dab through the open a lot of the time. Even Farah, flying straight through the open, straight through the sky, which is probably honestly why that map's not a great Farah map, is because there is no sky cover really to work with. First point, there's defense is a little bit. Second point, there's a little bit. Third point, there's not very much at all. Sky cover to work with, but even Far wants to be using cover in the sky, and the great thing is the cover's all over the place. You have cover like in slopes, like so. You have cover in random pillars around, in between shots, while you're reloading, when you're trying to dodge damage. You have corners that you can do the same thing with. You have random objects around the map like a payload that you can use. Pillar, corner, doorway, all acts as cover if you're using it properly. Also, high grounds all act as natural cover. They can see you, now they can't. They can see you, now they can't. And that is going to be beneficial for you. Also, high grounds, 2/3 of the characters in the game can't reach you without taking the stairs, which is added survivability. And then the third they can get to you need to use abilities, added survivability. And also, high grounds give you a lot of visibility. You can see here and here, here, but on low ground, well, you can't see over there, you can't see any of the high grounds. So high grounds give you a lot of visibility as well. And you got to think about the fact that high grounds aren't just good for you individually, it's also good for your team as a whole to have control over the high ground, and it denies the enemy team an advantage by securing the high ground. So not only do you get the advantage, you also can rip it away from the enemy team and give it to your whole team. So on that third point, or sorry, on the second point, when right where we ended, all of you guys were defending and just holding on the low ground, when if you had just taken high ground, you could defend pretty much like the same thing. You can still stop cart as it's coming underneath you, but instead of just being smacked up in the middle of the open, you have cover, you have visibility, and they can't reach you very easily, which gives additional survivability. So taking control of that high ground is going to be very valuable. It also means that you can stop them from, if they decided to, you could stop them from going around and taking that other high ground. But if you're on the low ground, you can't really stop them from doing that.
Right.
So
So
they
you
could.
would say, would you say like more often than not, there isn't really any cons to taking high ground that you should always try to.
Not unless it's like out of the fight. Like obviously, like you don't want to take this high ground if the fight's
Right.
happening over there. If it's irrelevant to the fight, then it's no good. But if it's in the fight and it's above the fight, then yeah, it should be good. Not all high
Okay.
grounds are equal, right? Like this high ground right here with cover and being next to the fight is gonna be much better than this one back here, where notice that this one actually lacks the ability to back up, and it's very wide open, so you can't actually easily get people to not see you. They can still see you up here, so it actually loses a lot of the cover, and you end up being out in the open, so it's less valuable if you're standing here. But if it's in the fight, then yeah, take high ground, because you then reposition there in between the fights, because it's gonna be really good for you and your team. And don't like be afraid to like never drop from high ground, but also don't drop from high ground if you don't need to drop from high ground.
Okay.
Does that kind of answer the question?
Yeah, no, that helps.
Cool. So here, you guys should probably, if the cart's right here, take this high ground. You guys can be ranged anywhere from the billboard over here, so you could be here, here, here. Probably wouldn't recommend here, because then you don't, once again, you lack cover and you can't really run anywhere. So the nearest cover's over there or over there. So don't stand on this one right here, and don't stand in the middle of the bridge. Use cover on the high grounds, right? So right here, cover. Billboard is also cover. So here, cover. This high ground as well. You can kind of peek off and shoot people from up here, depending on what character you're on. Farah could utilize this, and be up here on the high ground and just kind of peek up, shoot, and peek up and shoot and stuff like that. Cool. Since we got like 5 minutes left, we obviously will have a lot more to cover in future sessions. We've hit the tip of the iceberg in terms of like Overwatch as a whole.
Yeah.
But I mean, we covered a lot of different comm roles. Once again, in terms of practicing both individually and as a team. How do you apply the things we've talked about? You're going to be able to apply these things by making sure that you're actively focusing on it as you're playing, that you're not just coming into a game and just playing to play. You're not autopiloting, but you're playing to improve, and you're thinking about the things that you want to improve on. And that means you pick something out, like for example, you pick out like ult tracking, and you and ult planning, and you spend games really hammering in on that and trying to focus on it, and trying to work on your ult tracking. And you'll notice that as you put effort and focus and attention into something, it'll perform better. And then when you're doing it for a long enough period of time, it'll form it as a habit to where it just comes naturally. And then you can move on and start to work on something new. Now, you don't want to do everything all at once, because if you do everything, that might get overwhelming. So this applies on the individual scale as well as the team scale. If you guys as a team are all working on everything we talked about, so you're trying to do ult tracking, ult countering, ult planning, target calling, calling when fights are won and lost, and all of you are working on your positioning, well, that might be a lot, right? You guys might actually overwhelm yourselves and not actually do any of those well,
Right.
which means you won't actually improve. So instead, pick one category or 1 to 3 smaller things within a category to really nail in on, and focus on it until you've worked on it more, and then move on from there. So like maybe next time you guys play, instead of trying to do all of that, maybe you can start with trying to do ult tracking, ult countering, and ult planning, and start with those 3 before you're moving on to like all of the other things as well, right? So just start with that and try to hammer it in and nail it in, practice, see who works best with it, see who does it good, try working on that, and then you can move on from there. And then on the individual level, you guys can do that on the individual level as well. For those of you who are working on the call outs, focus on the call outs. Don't really worry about anything else. For those of you who aren't doing the call outs, maybe you can be more intentional and work on your positioning, since you're not the one doing the call outs. Okay. Um, Anybody have any final questions before we wrap up about anything?
No, I think I've been writing some stuff down. I think this was a great first session. We covered a lot, and yeah, I mean, I don't have any questions. I don't know if you guys do.
No, I
I
think
don't
we're
really
good.
have any. I think I'm
Actually,
good too.
sorry. Actually, I do have one
Yep,
question.
sure.
So, the individual that is tracking the ults, right? Would that also be the individual that is coming up with a game plan for countering the ults because they're tracking them?
So like I said, with the countering, it could go either direction theoretically to be the ult tracker or the ult planner. I would probably tend to err more towards the ult planner does it though, because if you have
Okay.
2 different people, that can get confusing if you have 2 different people calling plans, because
Oh, true.
then theoretically, let's say you need an ultimate to counter another ultimate, well then like one person's calling, hey, we need to use this ultimate, and then the other person's also calling what ultimates to use, so that can get confusing. So I'd probably say usually the ult planner would also implement the countering into their plan. So
Okay.
try to implement the countering into how you're planning your fight in the ultimates.
Okay, that makes sense.
Cool. Anything else?
I think we're good. Yeah, we're at the hour mark right now.
Cool. All right. Well,